All right, in today's episode, we're going to talk about how men can become emotionally intelligent. All right, so most of the time, what if emotional intelligence isn't about being more emotional, but about becoming a better communicator, leader, husband, father, and even a friend? Many men were taught how to be tough, but few were taught how to understand what they were feeling. Emotional intelligence isn't about chasing your masculinity, it's about strengthening it. So, we're going to talk about what is emotional intelligence. Okay. We're going to talk about understanding your own emotions, recognizing your emotional emotions affect your thoughts and actions, being able to manage emotions instead of being controlled by them, and understanding and responding to the emotions of others. So basically, to tie in all those, to understand your emotions, you got to first know what triggers you and what doesn't trigger you, right? Because if you can't understand your emotions, then everything is going to trigger you. And if you don't know how to respond to those triggers, then you're just going to be like a ticking time bomb in that sense. So that's how you got to recognize how your emotions affect your thoughts and your actions. So if someone tells you something and you just react without thinking about it, then that's, chaos in your head instead of analyzing why it got triggered or analyzing those emotions and then act accordingly or even think accordingly or even respond accordingly. Right. And also, you got to be able to manage your emotions, right? Because you can't let them control you. You can't let your emotions get the best of you and then let them control you, because at the end of the day, sometimes you can be like, oh, I wish I wouldn't react. I should have just been proactive. I should have just, sometimes you regret your emotions. So after all that, you got to understand and respond to the emotions of others, right? So you got to understand how that other person is feeling as well, and you got to respond accordingly. Because if you just respond in a certain way or even in a certain tonality, you're going to trigger that person, and it's going to allow that person to, tell you something, react in a certain way that maybe you're not used to, or maybe it might surprise you. So that's where the emotional intelligence comes in, right? So first you analyze it, and then you break it down, and then you respond to how that person would like to be responded to, or you can respond in the most basic and general form so that that person can either question it and say, "Hey, what did you mean?" Or they can just, take it for what it is and be like, "Okay, thank you for actually listening to me," or just responding in a good way. And a key point from all this is emotional intelligence is the ability to respond rather than to react, right? All right, the next bullet point is going to be why many men struggle with emotional intelligence, right? So here are some of them. If you guys want to write them down. Many boys grew up hearing don't cry or man up. Emotions are often ignored instead of understood. Some of us learn to express sadness as anger or even silence. And often society praises men for achievements, but not emotional awareness. So basically, to sum all that up, is, you know, what have we learned growing up, right? Do we know how to regulate our emotions? Because growing up, for me personally, I wasn't taught to, hey, if you're feeling sad, why are you feeling sad? If you're feeling angry, why are you feeling angry? If you're feeling happy, all these emotions, I was never taught to, analyze them. It was just like, okay, you're happy, you're happy. You're sad, you're sad. Don't worry about being sad. Whatever you're feeling, don't express it in that instant. All those negative emotions, don't express it. Why? Because, as a boy, being taught to be a man is like your emotions don't matter in the real world. right? The emotions are going to pay the bills. Emotions are just going to get you in a deeper hole than what it should be. So for me, being taught, and I'm pretty sure some people can relate, is that sometimes my emotions were ignored and misunderstood for something else. So as I was growing up, I didn't know how to ask the questions and I didn't know what questions to ask while I was growing up. Is like, okay, because my dad told me not to worry about my emotions or not to talk about my emotions because emotions aren't, valid in the real world, right? So I was like, okay, so when these emotions came up, what do I do? How do I do it? And then society as well, or even though, you were in a negative mindset, even though, all this stuff happened to you, you still were able to get promoted. You still were able to achieve these goals and dreams. So awesome. But at the same time, it's like, yes, you achieved all those goals and dreams, but yet you're still in that sad state. You're still emotionally unavailable for some people. You can't really express your emotions to your partner, your friends, or even coworkers. So society also plays a big role as well. And also sometimes this is a question that I like to ask myself and others is who taught you how to deal with your emotions growing up? Why? Because that's going to be the reason how you grow up as a man and as an individual, right? All right, we're also going to talk about self-awareness comes first over everything, meaning you got to identify your feeling before reacting. You got to also learn to recognize emotional triggers and ask yourself these questions. What am I feeling? Why am I feeling this? And what's the healthiest way to respond? So for me, when I ask myself, what am I feeling? Happy, sad, angry, okay. Next bullet point. Why am I feeling like this? Is it because they triggered me? Is it because it triggered an emotion? Is it because it reminded me of something? Whatever it is, you got to break it down to the most detailed aspect of it. And also, the last one is what's the healthiest way to respond? Whether it's, hey, give me 20 minutes, give me an hour, give me a day to process this, give me a day to be by myself so that way I can respond accordingly and I can respond the correct way instead of just responding with whatever my first thought is, right? Because if you don't, then, you're just going to respond and it's going to cause a snowball effect. It's going to be like, oh, it's going to be a negative conversation. It's going to be things that were said that you want to take back. So if you need that or also working out, get taking a walk, something that to really de-stress your mind, right? And here's a key point in this little segment, in this little bullet point right here. You can't manage your emotions you don't recognize. So that's why you got to recognize your emotions so that you can recognize it. All right. And the last part of it is going to be learn to regulate and not suppress your emotions. So there's always a difference between controlling emotions and bearing them, right? And also emotional regulation means responding with intention and suppressing often leads to resentment, anger, or emotions, or even shut down, right? So you got to understand to regulate your emotions and know how to respond accordingly, right? As we talked about earlier in the podcast. So you got to understand the difference between the two because if you don't know how to regulate your emotions, if you don't know how to basically release the valve on the water and it's a high pressure, what's going to happen? Everything's going to spill. It's going to be everywhere. So that's how your emotions are. If you just have the floodgates open, everything's gonna spill, your emotions, everything, and that person's not gonna find you attractive. That person's not gonna, see you as a valuable person because everything we talk about, they're just gonna spill their emotions, right? So you gotta learn how to control and manage your emotions and then of course regulate them. You gotta know when to turn it on fully in certain situations so you can let all these emotions come out and then you got to learn to turn the valve a little bit open so that way you can let it out a little bit so that way you can learn to recognize what you're doing, what you're saying to yourself and all those. And obviously you got to respond with intention, meaning okay, if I respond like this, what are the key things that are going to happen if I respond in this way and in this matter, and also and in this tonality as well. Because if you respond with all three of those things accordingly, that person will understand you to a certain extent and they'll question you and say, okay, you know what? Thank you for telling me that. But also, I didn't understand it. I understand what you meant, but I don't understand where you're coming from. And that's where it allows to have a very healthy discussion and understanding on both parties, right? Also, if you're suppressing your emotions and you don't know how to, you know, regulate them and you just say what you say, and you're known for that or that and you just don't say it, then it's going to be led to anger. You're going to be led to resentment because you know yourself. You don't know how to control your emotions. So instead of saying anything, you're just gonna stay quiet and you're gonna let the situation, be the situation. You're either, if it's a situation with family, friends, anything like that, it's gonna you're gonna feel like you're not heard or even, respected in some aspects because I'm pretty sure at one point you told someone or a family member, partner about how you were feeling and they didn't acknowledge it, they didn't respect it, or they didn't even take it into consideration. So therefore you just suppress it, and then as the years go by, that's where you start to feel that resentment, feel that anger, and then you just shut down at a certain point. And this is what I'm going to leave you with on this quote. Strength isn't hiding your emotion, it's handling them wisely. All right. I'm going to give it to you one more time just in case you didn't hear it. Strength isn't hiding your emotions, it's handling them wisely. All right. And I'm going to finish off this with a closing message for you guys. A man's greatest strength isn't found in pretending he has no emotions. It's found in understanding them, managing them with wisdom and using them to build stronger relationships, make better decisions and lead with integrity. Emotional intelligence isn't about becoming someone different, it's about becoming the man you're capable of being. And with that, stay tuned for the Q&A.
So, there's a couple of questions here. I want to start with this one. The first one is: do you think men are taught how to understand their emotions growing up? Why or why not?
It's a very good question. So, for me, and I'm only speaking for me and from my experience and from what I've known from friends and family members and, life experiences, I don't think we were taught how to understand our emotions growing up as men. Why not? Because, me personally, I was just taught that, hey, you know what? Your emotions aren't valid. Paying the bills are, doing what you got to do, showing up for work, showing up for your relationship, whether it's your partner, friends, or even family. So that's what I think, and that's what I know from experience as well, that, from the masses that I've talked to, we weren't taught how to understand our emotions. We were just taught to basically suppress them and then move on. Don't worry about it. Don't analyze it. Just, do what you got to do. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Basically, a man up kind of situation.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, no, I do see that. Okay, so the next question: what's the difference between being emotionally intelligent and being emotionally reactive?
So the difference is basically emotional intelligence is you analyze what you said or what was said to you and you respond accordingly with the proper tonality and with the proper, understanding that that person's going to understand you in a certain way. Now, being emotionally reactive is just someone tells you something and you just say whatever the first thing that comes out of your mouth, whether it's positive or negative. And that's, just saying it from whatever standpoint you are. You don't have no rationality, no understanding. You just say, boom, the first thing that's, pops up into your head, and you didn't take that time to analyze it and say, hey, you know what, me saying this might hurt this person or might affect this person in a negative way. Did that answer your question?
Yep. I think it's basically what you just mentioned about, controlling those emotions, understanding them. Okay, so next question is how does emotional intelligence make someone a better leader?
So, knowing how to be emotionally intelligent and to be a leader is basically saying that you got to analyze your emotions and you got to put yourself in both perspectives, like in the sense of like, okay, if I answer this person has to either understand me in the most very basic way so that that way they can ask the right questions instead of me just saying whatever I say. So, being a leader requires you to understand that other person and yourself as well so that that way you can articulate your thoughts and emotions into that other person as well so that that way the message is relayed in a clear and concise manner, and that way that person doesn't have to react in a negative way. Now they are, it is welcome for them to ask you a question, or it is, good that they say, hey, so what did you mean can you ask, can you be a little bit more detailed in what you meant? Because I do understand it, but maybe I might not be understanding some things just because that person might not know you fully, or the situation, or even, in a job as well. You got to relay it in a way where where that other person can welcome, you know, feedback and be like, hey, what did you mean? Did that make sense?
Hmm. I guess kind of a more related to the situation of, I mean, like saying, I don't want to be rude, right? And I'm not going to ask. But then again, that creates that confusion that you mentioned.
Exactly. So that's why you just got to say it in a very basic and general way so that the foundation is set and the understanding is understood. So that way that person can be like, okay, I understand what you meant, but I might need a little bit more detailed. And then that's where you, as a leader, as a man, can be like, okay, well, what did you mean? Well, I didn't understand this particular, sentence or this particular subject that you said or situation that you're meaning, right?
Yeah. Okay, the next question. How do we encourage more men to have honest conversations without judgment?
So basically that starts from yourself as well. So basically that starts from yourself to have those, honest conversations without judgment, right? So you got to be understanding to that person that you might not understand that person fully. So there are going to be questions that are going to be asked. There is going to be misunderstanding, and it's okay. That's where you can correct the person in a very positive and understanding way. So instead of just telling them, oh, no, that's not what I meant, and you start, being negative with them, or you start putting them down, or you just start even joking around in some cases, some people can get their feelings hurt. So the way we encourage more men to be honest in conversations is just allow them to be themselves, allow them to show their true and authentic self and emotions and be like, okay, well, what did you mean by that? Because every person has a different definition and a different meaning to certain things and situations. So that's why as men, you got to create a very welcoming and positive environment, and not just an environment of just, pure masculinity and just like, oh, your feelings don't matter. You got to have that, circle and that vibe about you that that person or people are going to open up to you, and they're not going to be afraid to be judged. They're not going to be afraid to be ridiculed. And also they're not going to be afraid that, oh, you know what? This person is going to post what I said on social media, because that's how it is nowadays. Like, oh, can you believe this person said this? What a loser, what a nerd, you know what I mean? It's like, no, we got to create that trust in the brotherhood, in the circle, in the friendship. So that way more of us can, speak on what we're going through and just speak on, hey, you know what, I might need another, avenue to think about. Hey, I might need another, thought, so that way, hey, you know what, there are two sides to every story, right? So there are many avenues to your question as well. Does that make sense?
Hmm. And I actually like the comment, every story has two sides.
Exactly. Because your side can mean something different, and then mine side can mean something different. And then we put those two together, and hey, we might come up with something interesting, right?
And I wanted to leave this last question at the end. It's a little bit more personal, but how do you personally deal with stress, frustration, or disappointment?
How do I personally deal with it? Okay, so that's a very great question. For me personally, obviously. So for me, it all depends on what situation it is. But in general, I either analyze it and I say, okay, what can I take from this? What can I learn from this? And ultimately, can I control this situation, emotion, whatever it is, right? And if I can't control it, then I just don't think about it. I distract my mind, whether it's I go work out, play video games, listen to music, something that's going to soothe my mind and bring me back to calmness, whether it's hearing motivational videos or hearing a podcast or even just journaling as well. Or sometimes, even not even sometimes, but most of the times, just pray as well. Just leave it up to God in this case, because sometimes you can't control what you can't control. So you got to just outsource your thoughts, because to me, I believe that your thoughts are the negative voice inside that wants to keep you where you're at. So that's how I do it. And when I'm frustrated as well, it's because it's just an emotional trigger. I'm frustrated because I can't control that situation, or I can't control that person, or I can't control nothing. That's why I get frustrated, because I want things done my way and it doesn't happen. So therefore the frustration comes in. But I have to really, you know, disconnect myself and be like, hey, you know what? This is not me. This is not how I move. This is not how I roll. So let me take a step back, so that way I don't say or do something that I'm going to regret or even take back. And the last part, the disappointment, I don't, I'm always going to be disappointed in the sense of things aren't going my way, right? Because life happens. So if I'm disappointed in something, then I learn from it, I analyze it, and I say, what could I learn from this? I take it for what it is, whatever it is, whether it's a relationship, friendship, job, situation. I say, okay, even though I'm disappointed in how I moved, how it went, or how the results were, how can I learn from it? Study it, really analyze it to its detailed form. And then after that, don't make the same mistake again. Or if you do, it'll be in a different situation, different setting, and in different environment. So it's really not, bad for me when I'm disappointed, because I know I will learn something from it. That's how I take it from all those negative things that, I go through. So at the end of the day, even though it was negative, there's always something positive that I will make from it, because it is, you have to. You have to learn like that. Even though it didn't go your way, you find something positive, you go with that and be like, okay, I'm gonna become a better person because I learned how to do this, do that, move like this. Does that make sense to you?
Yep. And I usually say that doesn't matter. You're gonna get disappointed. You're gonna get sad, angry. Um, but at that time is when you stop, analyze, and take the good and say, "Hey, this is the next time. I'm not gonna repeat it. I know what to do." And I like the topic of find something that calms you, that entertains you, maybe distracts you. I just everyone is different. Just find one like you mentioned, the ones that help you out with this situation. And that's all I have.
All right. And that's it for our podcast. Make sure to tune in next time. All right. Ooh.